The Fed was created to address financial panics, and its independence and its ability to act quickly is a key feature of what the Fed is about.
Breaking news as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told reporters that President Donald Trump may declare a national housing emergency this fall, potentially making good on his emergency price relief mandate that the White House issued in January of 2025. But the real question is how? How does he plan on reducing home prices and increase home inventory? Today, we're going to go under the hood to see if this is more than just propaganda. We're going to see what their potential plans are, as well as talk about what Mitch and I believe are some of the solutions to correcting the most toxic housing market in history. And we're going to end this video by talking about potential other economic black swans that may spell even more trouble for the American economy. And having said that, welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Mitch Vexler, and to the viewers, you guys already know this video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Sir, happy emergency day. How are you?
We're going to see how all this plays out, but I find it interesting that the SEC, both on a state and federal level, have now been notified of the problems. The amount of downloads on documents that have been going on Mr. Mashburn's site and my site indicate government activity. There's no amount of people that would be downloading that amount of documents. It hasn't happened in our history yet. So I find that interesting. I really think that the government's starting to pay attention, although they're not reaching out, but or not yet anyway. But things are happening, and for people to be talking that there's an emergency in housing, we'll get into that in this video as to how all this ties together.
Well, speaking of government activity, I want to remind you and the viewers on what the White House put out in January. Delivering emergency price relief for American families and defeating the cost of living crisis. Again, this was January 20th of 2025. And I'm just going to read the bottom here. I hereby order the heads of all executive department and agencies to deliver emergency price relief consistent with applicable law to the American people and increase the prosperity of American workers. This shall include pursuing appropriate actions to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply. Now, this article coming out September 1st, titled Bessent, Trump may declare national housing emergency this fall. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Washington Examiner on Monday that President Donald Trump might declare a national housing emergency this fall, addressing rising prices and dwindling supply. It would be the first national housing emergency since the Great Recession, when the housing bubble burst as President Barack Obama was preparing to take over the White House from former President George Bush. Since taking office, President Trump has declared 9 national emergencies, ranging from immigration to trade, and in August, at an emergency targeting violent crime in Washington. Now his administration is signaling the housing market could be next. The Trump administration does not want to override state and local control, but Bessent suggested the White House is exploring other options, such as standardizing zoning codes, lowering closing costs, and even granting tariff exemptions for construction materials. The remarks come as Trump seeks to position affordability as a centerpiece for Republicans' 2026 midterm platform. The no tax on tip provision in the recently signed One Big Beautiful Bill Act is part of that push, with the administration also eyeing housing relief as a key pillar. Trump blasted Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell in August for hurting the housing industry very badly as the president campaigned for lower interest rates. The 2008 housing crisis was the blow up of a credit bubble built on easy money and weak underwriting. For years, leaders pushed adjustable rate and subprime mortgages to borrowers who often could not afford them, then sold those loans to Wall Street. Banks bundled mortgages into securities and complex products, which rating agencies often stamp as safe despite thin cushions against default. Cheap credit, speculation, and the belief that home prices always go up inflated demand and prices, while leverage spread the risk through the global financial system. When rates reset higher and prices stopped rising due to economic downturn, delinquencies spiked. Falling home values trapped owners underwater, foreclosures surged, and the value of mortgage securities collapsed. Confidence evaporated, interbank lending froze, and several major institutions failed or required rescue, turning a housing bust into a global financial crisis. The fallout included deep job losses, a wave of foreclosures, and massive wealth destruction. Policymakers responded with bank backstops, aggressive Fed actions, and later reforms like Dodd-Frank and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to tighten mortgage standards, curb risky trading, and stress test big banks, all of which they failed to do. Let's listen to this old video during the global financial crisis from President George Bush. And when you listen to this, understand that they've already been in recession for 1 month. Listen to George Bush.
Series of meetings with my economic team on the outlook for the U.S. economy. And before I left for the Middle East, I directed them to conduct a thorough assessment of our economic condition, consult with members of Congress, and provide me with their recommendations about any actions we might need to take. The economic team reports that our economy has a solid foundation, but that there are areas of real concern. The economy is still creating jobs, though at a reduced pace. Consumer spending is still growing, but the housing market is declining. Business investment and exports are still rising, but the cost of imported oil has increased. My administration has been watching our economy carefully.
I hope that they were watching the economy go into recession, because that's exactly what happened. Now, Mitch, before we go into the solutions, our next segment, we're going to dig deeper into very specific solutions. The article mentioned easy money and no underwriting. Well, when we fast forward to today, is the easy money and no underwriting ISD bond debt only bigger? Would you agree with that or not?
Many times larger. There's no comparison. So in 2008, you had what was called no documentation with regard to the ability to get a loan. Well, in 2023, 24, 25, you have the exact same situation, different label, but same situation, where prices of the housing were increased and then the discounts were given off of that, such that a person, just like 2008, could get into a house basically with no money down. Well, you have the exact same situation playing out now. However, I want to point something out. On that article you read with regard to the statement made by Besant, one must realize that those ideas are nothing more than fractions of a penny when compared to the real estate fraudulent tax, the equity stripping that's occurred, and the fraudulent school district bonds. The idea of those solutions, while we're going to come up with ideas to help people and create more housing, given what he had said, doesn't cut it. So we have cheap credit that he didn't address, just like 2008. And more than likely, based on all the documentation that I've put together on the website and the spreadsheets we've analyzed, there's a big problem here, because in 2008, what occurred was the real estate going down. This time round, not only will the real estate go down, so will the fraudulent bonds. And those fraudulent bonds are much, much exponentially larger than the real estate itself.
Yeah.
And that's why a floor needs to be put in underneath all this.
Can you explain why a solution to the toxic housing market and even prices going down and affordability improving, why the ultimate solution might just be, and actually is, abolishing property taxes? Because again, that may handle both of those problems. Can you go into the ultimate solution now being the abolishment or repeal of property taxes?
I've been staring at the math in these spreadsheets in reality since 2016. And if there was another solution, I would have figured it out. The math doesn't indicate that there's another solution. The only solution, for multiple reasons, is the repeal of all property tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax. It accomplishes dozens of things. And we even have a graphic out there that you can look up on the website called Benefits of Repealing All Property Tax. Now, the idea of what President Trump is saying, well, we have to lower price and increase inventory. Yes, that's true. Question is, how do you get there? And the point that I'm about to make is you can say it, but you can't get there unless you remove the fraud. In order to remove the fraud, that means repeal all property tax. All property tax is a fraud. It violates the 16th Amendment to the US Constitution. Increasing inventory, well, the way you would want to attempt to do that is to drive the price down. How do you drive the price down? Federal Reserve printed money to cover off the fraud. You have to get rid of the fraud, i.e. the printing of the money, in order to balance the market from which the price will naturally drop. You can't just jawbone this. This has to take physical action. And that's exactly why we sent these documents to the Attorney General and the state auditor. We're making a point. They violated their job. They violated their oath of office. And that is to force the state of Texas to go deal with the federal government to put a floor underneath the fraudulent bonds. There is no other solution to this other than the repeal of the property tax in favor of the uniform states sales tax.
You know, Mitch, another thing, if we eliminate property tax, not only are we removing the gauntlet of fraud in between, so we're loosening up budgets, we're eliminating certain costs, but it's also eliminating the central appraisal district, because the central appraisal district has essentially helped to set a floor under home prices by using software that overvalues them. And who uses the central appraisal district information? Zillow. And who uses Zillow? Almost every single American in the United States. So good points there, eliminating property taxes. Now, what I want to show you guys is what AI says about what President Donald Trump can do about reducing prices and increasing inventory. Proposed policies and potential benefits. So the first thing is they're saying deregulation and supply expansion. President Trump's supply strategy centers on reducing regulatory burdens and expanding housing supply. But I'm going to show you guys that we actually have plenty of supply for new homes. So I'm not sure that that's going to be something that really works here. Opening federal lands for development. A key proposal involves opening millions of acres for government-controlled federal lands for residential construction. Again, we have plenty of new construction. I'll show you guys that here in a minute. Reducing regulatory burdens, streamlining building regulations could significantly lower development costs, which can account for up to 25% of the cost for new homes, according to the National Association of Home Builders. That sounds like it actually may reduce costs. Streamlining federal environmental review. Financial market adjustments. Now, this is saying privatization of GSEs. While removing government guarantees, increasing competition among lenders could lead to innovative mortgage products and potentially better terms for qualified borrowers. Okay, but again, we're maxed out right now. I'm not sure that that would help. Market-oriented interest rate policies, tax incentives and programs. I always like tax incentives. Low-income housing tax credit expansions. That helps investors build low-income rental units. So again, I don't know. State and local tax deduction increases. I like that. Business tax benefits. Now, potential challenges and criticism. Immigration policy and labor. Stricter immigration policies could disrupt the labor force in the construction industry, which relies heavily on immigration workers, approximately 30% of their workforce. I'm not sure if that's saying that 30% of their workforce is illegal, and maybe they should be fined for that. I'm not sure, but I'm getting sick tired of people violating the law. I'll just say that. Financial risk and reduced affordability. GSE privatization risk. While aiming to increase market competition, privatizing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac could remove government guarantees, leading to higher consumer mortgage rates due to increased risk for lenders. And we know that one thing that we can count on from lenders is to get themselves into a very bad situation when it comes to risk, and then we bail them out. Budget cuts and program restructuring. local control and jurisdiction complexity, but the overall outlook is this. Experts generally agree that while the Trump administration prioritizes addressing housing affordability, dramatic or rapid challenges are unlikely in the short term. Long-term effectiveness will depend on the administration's ability to translate executive orders into actionable policies and incentivize state and local governments to reform zoning laws and reduce barriers of construction. Maybe that's really good on the East Coast and the West Coast, not here in Texas. We don't need any of that. Broader economic factors like interest rates and inflation control will continue to play a significant role in housing affordability.
Good morning. I thank the Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke, and SEC Chairman Chris Cox for joining me today. This is a pivotal moment for America's economy. Problems that originated in the credit markets and first showed up in the area of subprime mortgages have spread throughout our financial system. This has led to an erosion of confidence that has frozen many financial transactions, including loans to consumers and to businesses seeking to expand and create jobs. As a result, we must act now to protect our nation's economic health from serious risk. There will be ample opportunity to debate the origins of this problem. Now is the time to solve it. In our nation's history, there have been moments that require us to come together across party lines to address major challenges. This is such a moment. Last night, Secretary Paulson and Chairman Bernanke and Chairman Cox met with congressional leaders of both parties, and they had a very good meeting. I appreciate the willingness of congressional leaders to confront this situation head on. Our system of free enterprise rests on the conviction that the federal government should interfere in the marketplace only when necessary. Given the precarious state of today's financial markets and their vital importance to the daily lives of the American people, government intervention is not only warranted, it is essential.
Mitch, they did not mention fractional ownership. They didn't mention institutional investing. They didn't mention short-term rentals, and they didn't mention the Fed manipulating the housing market. So to me, those are probably even bigger concerns. Is that fair to say? Do you agree that those four things that I just listed are an issue to the housing market? And if so, how big a problem are those things? Institutional investing, fractional ownership, the Fed, and short-term rentals?
Well, everything you said is a problem, but I want to point out that AI is only as good as what it sees. So not only did it not see what the list you had just mentioned, but it didn't see the fraud at the central appraisal districts. It didn't see the fraud at the school districts. It didn't see the bond fraud that's out there. It didn't see the Treasury printing money causing inflation. And all of these issues are trumped, no pun intended, but all these issues are trumped by one simple thing that nobody pays attention to, and that's the median household income. If the median household income doesn't exist to pay for any of these items, well, that's the abject definition of bankruptcy. And with regard to the government saying, well, we're going to make things easier and we're going to speed up the development process, you don't have any further to look than Canada. The federal government did that. Cities, on the other hand, didn't. Federal government laid down a mandate to speed up the development process where you, in theory, could get a subdivision on the ground in 6 months. Not only did that not happen, it turned into 4 years. The cities themselves slow walked it. There's a community in Ontario called LaSalle, and LaSalle, in order to get a subdivision on the ground, give or take, is a 4-year window. And by the way, you have to spend millions of dollars to satisfy the city that everything is in compliance and there wasn't a snake or there wasn't a bird or whatever it happens to be. The point of the matter is they can say whatever they want. It's jawboning. The bottom line is the system is polluted, heavily contaminated, nuclear waste with fraud at the real estate tax level and at the bond level, and nibbling at the edges when even AI itself doesn't understand the problem because it can't see it is an exercise in futility. That's why we have the website, and that's why the website is available for the public and for all the government officials. We hide nothing. It's all there. You just got to read it.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was also concerned that neither that article from the Treasury Secretary nor AI pinpointed any of those things that we mentioned, which are arguably much bigger issues. And Mitch, speaking of much bigger issues, let's look at some charts that potentially spell out much bigger issues. Starting with U.S. business employees compensation as a percentage of net domestic product. And what I'm showing the viewers here is corporate America keeps getting more profit, keeps getting more money as the American worker continues to make even less. And that, my friends, is the biggest issue of all. People forget to take care of their people, and this chart spells that out. Here's another one. U.S. credit card delinquency balances continue to tick higher. Unpaid credit card balances for at least 3 months, so this is major default, rose to the highest level in 14 years. It's over 12% right now. That is absolutely astonishing. In fact, it didn't even get that high during the global financial crisis. And leading into the global financial crisis, it was under 10%. So delinquencies right now, mom and pop delinquencies on credit cards is higher than it was leading into the global financial crisis. I want your attention to go to the upper right, which is rent deflation for 1 and 2 bedroom homes. We have had a couple months in a row now to where we have had nominal deflation in the rental market. And big shout out to Danielle DiMartino. We already have home prices going down and we have inventory skyrocketing. You guys will see that in a minute. And what I want you guys to notice is the decline from peak, which is right here, and from 2020 is right here. So Austin's leading the way, down 23.8% from peak, but it's still up 31% from 2020. It goes to show you just how unrealistic a lot of these price run-ups really were. So take a look at the cities here. I'm gonna just scroll down. You guys can see that here. First of all, Lake Charles, Louisiana lost all of their gains plus more. They're down 8.2% since the peak in 2020, as is another one right here in Louisiana, down 8.8%. I mean, geez Louise, a lot of these places not doing good. Lafayette as well, Louisiana, only up 4.9% since 2020, losing almost all of their equity gains. Absolutely unbelievable. And this list keeps going. Another one, Alexandria, Louisiana, only up 8.8%. Very, very interesting data here. And on top of that, we already have inventory. The number of unsold completed homes for sale is already where it was at during the global financial crisis. So we don't really need more inventory, at least overall for new builds. There are some places, East Coast, West Coast, with zoning restrictions, maybe yes, but again, highest level since July of 2009. You guys, we have plenty of new homes right now. We have an affordability problem. This may be the biggest black swan of all, which is commercial mortgage-backed securities. When did we stop talking about this? Look at this, multifamily commercial mortgage-backed security delinquency rate. And this has skyrocketed up to 7%. Leading into the global financial crisis, this was only about 2 to 3%. So we have a much higher delinquency for multifamily commercial mortgage-backed securities versus the global financial crisis. And just to sum all that up on what that means for mom and pop, let's listen to this video.
I truly cannot be the only person in this world that feels like I'm just existing. Y'all, I work. My husband works. And it's like, where's the extra money to go enjoy life itself? At this point, I'm only living to work. Like, there is no enjoyment except for to just work. I am ready for that point in my life where I can go to work, but then on my free time, I have all the money to go do all the things I want to do. But for now, it's just working and existing.
Mitch, we went over a lot of uncertainties in the economy right now. I didn't even cover the derivatives market, not really. What do you think as of right now, September 1st, of 2025, what's the biggest problem in the economy right now? And is it apathy?
People don't understand what and how deep the problem really is. It's hard for them to articulate. A lot of property owners get it because they have to write the check. But then the ability to drill down they believe that it is above them, and it's not. The real problem is fraud. And when you understand that you are being defrauded by virtue of the equity stripping, and that equity stripping is occurring at the hands of the central appraisal districts who ignore the law, and 83% of the bonds that are raised as a result of that money that comes in from those central appraisal districts is and goes to the school districts. So there's a chain of command here, a chain of fraud. When you can articulate that chain of fraud, you begin to see clearly that you have to get involved, and mom and pop have to get involved. The reason why we have gone after the Attorney General's office and the state auditor's office is basically the same reason. They didn't do their job, neither one of them. And therefore, the SEC is going to have to get involved. And if necessary, the SEC can file suit against the state of Texas and make it do its job. The problem is we're running out of time. We are at 2008. The median household income doesn't exist to pay these debts. That's clear. And so it's not a question of people being apathetic. It's they believe they don't understand, which is why we're hammering on the websites, Jeff's, Travis, mine. The information is all there. These videos are there. The biggest problem with the videos, it's very difficult to get out what we want to say in the short segments of time that we have to say it in. And that's the first thing. Second thing is, as time progresses, what we've accomplished in, let's call it the last 12 days, as far as I know, has never been done in the history of the state of Texas, let alone the United States of America. The documentation that we have put together to force the state to talk to the federal government, as far as I know, has never been done. Nobody's ever taken this tack to say, hey, wait a minute, the entirety of the system, right from the word go, which is the 16th Amendment to the US Constitution, is a fraud. And it's been on the go for generations. The problem is, per the rule of 72, they have jumped the ability to even pay the interest. That is the equity stripping. That is why mom and pop don't have any money. That is why that lady who was just saying, I'm living to work. It's the fraud that's doing it. It's the real estate tax that's doing it. It's the all the way down to the tax assessor collectors that's doing it. We have evidence that the tax assessor collector agreed and accepted fraudulent central appraisal district data knowingly. We've got it on tape. It's irrefutable that the fraud has been committed. The trick now is mom and pop are going to have to stand up in unison, neighbors, friends, family, and say, that's it. You start calling your school district superintendents, you email them, you call the boards of the school district, you call the chief appraiser, you call the members of the board at the central appraisal districts, you call everybody you've got in politics there, from your council people all the way to the mayor. You bombard them. Simply say, we're not going to put up with it anymore. And if you don't agree to sign a pledge effective immediately to repeal all real estate tax in favor of the uniform state sales tax, that you, mom and pop, will do everything in your power to have them removed from office and shown the door. Doesn't matter what order that is in it, as long as it happens. You can't sit there anymore because they're stripping your future. It's not just what they've stolen in the past. That rolls forward for the next 6 years. And by the way, it's not just the equity that they've stripped out of your house. Think of it this way. If 6 years ago, and what the amount of money you've paid, let's say that in the last 6 years, you've paid the equivalent of $50,000. Well, if you had that $50,000 and you invested it, you'd actually have $55,000 if you invested it at 10%. In other words, it's not just the physical cash they've taken out of your property and out of your pocket. It's the idea that they have stripped your future earnings at the same time. And that's why the only thing that matters is the median household income. If that median household income isn't there to pay it off, that is the definition of bankruptcy. That is why the school district here in Texas is insolvent. That is why the bond guarantee program here at the state of Texas cannot cover off the fraudulent bonds that it has created. These problems work themselves all the way across the United States. So it's not a question of being apathetic at this point. Now, mom and pop has no choice but to get involved.
Right. And if you guys want to get involved, in fact, we're asking you, please, politely, to get involved because we do need your help. We've been making that clear. We have links in this description. Go to Mitch's website, mockingbirdproperties.com/DCAD, and go to the Facebook group linked below and join in a community of people that are already standing and already trying to abolish and repeal property taxes. And other than that, guys, if you're out there investing in yourselves, your life, in real estate, whatever it is, your ability to retire, you guys already know. We wish you luck and we hope you win.